If we're going to allow our students to achieve their full potential, we need a massive investment in education and training. And that education starts at the youngest age. I was really pleased when the Gonski review came out and said it's time that we supported education funding based on the needs of students and recognised that right across Australia, in public education in particular, there are so many students who are not being supported to achieve to their full potential. Schools have been struggling for a very long time to be able to provide additional assistance not only to people with disabilities and serious disadvantage, but there's been a real failure to be able to provide specialist educational help in things like everything from the arts and music and sport. We need to make sure that as a whole community we rethink how we value education. This is about a cultural shift in Australia to say we value education. I'm a former school teacher, so you would expect me to be passionate about education, and I am, because I've seen the transformation in the lives of people when they have access to education. And make no mistake, all the other countries in our region are hungry to make sure that their students get the best education possible. We really need a national conversation which says, let's get behind the implementation of the Gonski review, let's actually rethink how much we value education, and let's find the money now.
The Gonski review showed that the current funding arrangements are failing our children and the nation as a whole. The current funding arrangements are contributing to a widening of achievement gaps between students, a 2-year achievement gap between advantaged and disadvantaged students, a 3-year achievement gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, a 5.5-year achievement gap between the top 20% of the Year 9 cohort and the bottom 20% of the Year 9 cohort. David Gonski made it very clear we need to act and act now. The urgency for schools funding reform has been established, and any further delay is to deny the facts and the evidence. The government commissioned the review, handpicked the panel, and it's now time for the government to get on with the task of schools funding reform. David Gonski recommended the injection of a further $5 billion into school education, $3.8 billion of which would go to government schools, recognising that government schools are open to all children in every community and that government schools do the heavy lifting. 80% of students from low SES backgrounds attend government schools. 85% of Indigenous students attend government schools. 80% of students with disabilities are in government schools, and the overwhelming majority of students in rural, remote and isolated settings are in government schools. David Gonski recommended a funding system that would better meet the needs of all students by targeting funding to meet those needs, to give schools the resources they need to develop and implement programs to give every child the opportunity to reach his or her full potential. In the interest of our children, in the interest of our future productivity and prosperity as a nation, we need funding reform now. 6 months has been long enough. The Prime Minister must now act. The time for words is over. It's now time for action.